Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. This week we're back to a three-man podcast. My name is Ben Jackson. I'll be your host once again and always joined by Joris and Scott. Joris and Scott, how are you guys doing this evening?
Hey guys, how are you? Do you know what I've been doing the last few days? I've been having great fun testing the Pro League's new app. It's not live yet to freely download. We'll let you know when it is, but I've been playing around with the video interface on that and checking it for all sorts of cock-ups and things like that and making sure it's ready to go, doing our little bit. So it's looking good, it's looking sexy, and it should be available soon.
But we're not sponsored by the Pro League yet.
No,
but,
we're just helping them out, you know. Got to be done.
but it's also a thing that I still have on my to-do list for in the upcoming days, because I still have to download everything, but I could be testing it and I should be testing it soon. Did we have a good advertisement of the league this weekend, guys?
Yeah, I think we did, and hopefully when that app's released, it's moving the league on, isn't it? I mean, every league kind of has an app and stuff like that now. As long as they add like a fantasy football feature to it, I'll be quite happy, even though my team did absolutely dreadfully this weekend. Let's kind of go over the scores from the weekend before we dive into the matches. On Friday night, we started with Union hosting Charleroi. They won that 1-1 goal to nil. Club Brugge beat a really poor Anderlecht side 1-0. Leuven won again. This time they won 2-0 again. Clean sheet, 2 goals. Kind of a little theme they've got going. Oostend managed to beat Mechelen 2-1. Ghent and Sint-Truiden drew 1 apiece. Genk beat Standard 3-1. Eupen surprised Club Brugge with a 2-1 win. Solang lost 1-0 at home to Kortrijk. And Antwerp beat Zulte Waregem 1-0 at home. Let's start with the Union game. Great atmosphere, as usual, down in the Stade Joseph Marien. Unfortunately, that won't be the one they get to use for the European game coming up this week, which is such a shame because there's just something about that stadium. You just feel like if you played a European game there, it'd feel like one of those old school kind of European fixtures, but alas, they're going to be playing in Leuven. And they kind of brought the energy and the excitement that they usually do. I know Will Downing on commentary said it was kind of a different performance. And I think that's because teams realise that you kind of do just have to sit back against a side like Union and make them try and break you down, which is what Charleroi did. I personally felt Charleroi really struggled doing that as a tactic because I just didn't see any way of them getting themselves up the pitch because Badji just wasn't holding the ball up. Zari, he's not a hold-up striker. He couldn't hold the ball up. So they'd clear their lines or try and play out from the back. Playing out from the back, no one held the ball up. They lost it. Clearing their lines, no one was holding it up. So both sides actually did have chances in the first half. Union had quite a few. However, we went in at half-time 0-0. And the man who broke the deadlock was a bit of a surprise. And I think it was one of those moments where you're like, what is that man doing there? It was big Ross Sykes because he is pretty big. The man recently signed from Accrington Stanley. Played a really, really nice kind of 1-2 down the wing and just continued his run, ended up in the box, and it was a ridiculously good finish for a centre-back on his home debut. Celebrated in style. You could tell he absolutely loved that one. Union definitely could have added to it. However, Charleroi did start to make a little bit of an inroad. Even just slightly before that, Marc-Étienne Maritza had a really decent shot from the edge of the area. But they just didn't quite have the potency up front to worry Union and Maurice in goal. We saw a debut for Admir Nadir Ben Bouali, the man that was recently signed from Algeria. Looked a little bit lively, but didn't really get many chances. They chucked on Mbenza, Golizadze, Hermans, but they just couldn't find a way past the Union defence. So Union get up and running at home with a 1-0 win. Charleroi, I think what I kind of thought about them before the season, the fact that they need a striker. They've said they're not going to sign one now, but I do think they need someone that can hold the ball up a little bit more to bring their players into play. Guys, what did you think of this one? Were you impressed with Union and their slightly different look to what we saw from them last season?
I think it was much more like their old selves, as we can call them that. I mean, I did expect them to be improved this week, playing at home, playing on the front foot, as they always do at the Marien. And yeah, it was pretty decent stuff from them all round, particularly after they went in front. Really impressed with big Rossi Sykes, actually, even before his goal. he's looking like a really nice addition for Union, and a player who definitely should have been playing at a higher level than the one he was playing at. He looks like his reading of the game and his composure and his communication looks absolutely first rate to me, and he's got a pretty good physical presence. So I think he's going to be a great addition, and that goal will do his confidence the world of good. Great run. And as you were saying at the time, Ben, what the fuck is he doing there? It was just unbelievable to see him popping up there. It's really interesting to me what's happening up front with Union at the moment. Obviously, the main issue, which we've always known was always going to be, who is Dante van Zier's new partner going to be? Matchday 1, Dante was partnered with Eckhart Ayenza, who did okay. He's been carrying a little knock, I think. Simon Adingra started against Charleroi and didn't do quite as well as he did the previous week against St Truden. I mean, didn't expect him to be able to reproduce that superb goal that he did on match day 1, but it was interesting that they chose to put him up front, and it'll be interesting to see if he starts with Van Zier against Rangers this week. Big call there for Karel Geerts to make, but I think Union are looking pretty decent, and there's a number of signings they've made in the last few days, and there's another one coming in. Looks like Victor Boniface, Nigerian striker from Bodo Glimt. Looks like he's definitely coming in. So I think they're tooling up. It's getting a bit more intensive for them. And those people who thought that they were maybe going to go on a downer, I don't think that's going to happen at all. Actually,
I think it was a bit more realistic, but maybe it was also a bit more realistic from Charleroi against Union. That's a thing we will probably discover over the course of the season. Indeed, I do think teams will be less naive in going against Union. The things I wanted to highlight of this game were that both goalies had a good game, even though Charleroi did create less. Maurice still had a really good save on that shot from Eli Marita from distance. And Coffee, once he got the ball out of Adingra's feet, and another time, he put a free kick on the bar in the second half. Decent performance from Union. Charleroi, I think they did quite okay defensively, although if you look at our stats, I was surprised when I looked them up later on that Union really had more chances than I thought, but maybe they kept them away from goal, so that chances came from more difficult angles. Except, the one time, you guys already praised the run and the finish from Sykes already. I guess he's pretty psyched now. Haha.
You've been all day.
Nice.
Coffee being man of the match despite losing, not a good sign, but I don't think it was not that a worrying performance from Charleroi either.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And yeah, the Coffee one on Adingra when he came out, that was such a good tackle save. I don't even know how to describe those ones, but yeah, he kind of flew out of his box. So often you see that a penalty being given there, but he just timed it to absolute perfection to get the ball. So yeah, I'm a big Coffee fan. Everyone knows that who listens to this podcast. So I'm always happy to praise the man when he has a good performance. And he definitely had a good performance. There's nothing he could really do with Sykes' goal. And yeah, as you said, Scott, he had a really good performance at the back. And I was really impressed with him stepping up from the kind of lower levels of English football to play at the top level of Belgium. He didn't really look that out of place. So excited to see what he does going forward. Let's move on to this Saturday, which saw Anderlecht travel to Bruges to play Cercle Bruges. And they just put in an absolute stinker in this one. Cercle, I only managed to catch the highlights, but it's basically first half all Cercle, creating chances. Van Kromberger forced into a lot of saves, and I feel like without him, it could have been a much worse kind of situation for Anderlecht. And it kind of summed up in the 35th minute when Abdul Razak gets sent off via VAR check that saw him kind of pushing someone off the ball from a free kick, which there seemed to be a lot of free kicks on the edge of the box that Anderlecht were giving away. And defensively, they just looked a little bit all over the place, which was, would be a little bit concerning to see, considering that there's no one that can really come in at centre-back to kind of change that. It's like the three they have at the moment are the three they're going to have. I know that Mazu said when Kana comes back, he's potentially going to put him at centre-back to kind of give them another option. But at the moment, it is Darquahut and Debas, so it's kind of they need to sort it out between them. However, they did go in at halftime at 0-0, so they had kind of a chance to get back out there and put in a better performance, I guess, but it just didn't really seem to happen for them. Amusa had a pretty decent chance. I think it was at the back post, which he didn't convert. And they got somehow conceded caught on the break when I'm pretty sure when I watched this one back, they have more men back than Cercle do in an attack. But Louis Torres, it was the man on his debut who just went an absolute mad run, Ross Sykes style, I guess you could say now. Maybe he's going to become a trademark thing. He powers down left-hand side, plays it out wide before making a break into the middle. Ball comes back across him after some absolutely horrific defending from, I think it was Delcourt, I can't quite remember, who just basically runs past the ball, just completely misses the ball. Ball gets played back across to Torres, who sweeps it home. Cercle fans went absolutely mad. They win this 1-0, and Scott and Joris, I think they pretty much deserve to win this.
Yeah, definitely. Anderlecht, to sum it up, I guess it's a stat at the break, but they had an XG of, literally 0. I don't think I've ever seen that. So they didn't take any shot from any distance or that at all. So, then it's difficult to go ahead, of course. Yeah, Cercle were playing well. I didn't completely watch this game, so Scott will be able to tell a bit more, actually. This was a really bad performance from Anderlecht throughout, and a decent one from Cercle that probably should have scored a few more. Okay, they did score one more, which was chopped off for an unknown reason, which I think it should have been chopped off for offside anyway, but that's not what the VAR check was about. So I think the VAR team and the referee team escaped there. The only chance for Anderlecht indeed, or the only big chance for Anderlecht was the Amuzu miss indeed, which was quite comical, just more in the way of he kind of mistimed the ball and goes for a header. Well, I guess the ball makes a weird curve. He anticipated for a header, and if he would not have tried with a head, he probably just had to put it in. It hit the bar indeed, and a bit of comical miss there, but also, it would not have been deserved. The defending on the goal was indeed, not great. That's an understatement, I think. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think the whole defense was not looking great there anyway. The one thing also, from Mazu afterwards already, he's already putting it on the players, which is not really not on the system, which is not necessarily a good sign already. If you already as a manager, put your pressure all on the players, that this is not going to gain him some popularity in that group, I suppose. But we'll see how that develops, of course. But as we all know, the pressure is really high. Last thing on Anderlecht, I think I will come back on some Cercle things later on. But for now, I'm focusing on Anderlecht. About Abdul Razak, the red card, I think it was a bit. He did have a nightmare of a game apparently, and also last week he was not great, so he's definitely not having a great start. But the reason why he got the red card in the end, I'm not sure if that's really worth a red card. We got a lot of red cards this weekend, and I believe this was the first one of them, so it definitely deserves a mention. But I'm not sure if this one was deserved as a straight red card.
It's interesting, isn't it, guys? Because, Joris was talking about, Mazu kind of, putting the responsibility of that performance onto the players and in a way challenging them. But, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you know what you're going to get playing Cercle at the moment. You know what I mean? You know there's going to be a high press. It's going to be high intensity. There's going to be high turnovers. You have to really be on your toes against Cercle. Anderlecht, actually, one of their problems, I think, was they started incredibly slowly in this game and were off it right from the start. And I do think a lot of those players do need to have a look at themselves and their attitude and their approach. I don't know whether they're struggling to adapt to Mazu's system. And I think there's part of that because, as we know, and me and Joris were talking about this last week, there's definitely a slight tension between what the Anderlecht fans expect and what they would like to see in their side and the way that the team are playing at the moment. There's a gap there, and players are not really responding that positively, I don't think. And that's a bit of a worry. And they were just absolutely turgid this weekend. It was a really, really poor performance. I mean, effectively no shots on target, as Joris was saying earlier, over 90 minutes, and I did expect some kind of improvement in the second half because they were that poor in the first half, but if anything, they were worse in the second half, which was strange, and I thought they were very unlucky not to go in 2 down at half time. The goal that was chopped off, I still don't really think there was anything wrong with. I know Joris was pointing out an offside issue somewhere. I think Cercle will, it matters less to them now because they did justifiably win the game in the end. But Anderlecht, just worry me a bit at the moment. It's fine to tweak systems and things like that, but they have a big European game coming up this weekend, which we'll talk about this week rather. And the way they're playing at the moment just gives me a lot of fear for them, kind of going into that. Cercle, on the other hand, excellent. Looked like the Cercle at the tail end of last season. Did everything that they didn't do on match day one. Dominic Talhammer was talking about how he'd been disappointed against Westerlo on match day one because he thought his players looked a little bit too frightened to attack Westerlo. Well, my word, they'd obviously had a word about that because they really had a go at Anderlecht. And interestingly, we had one of those brilliant stat-bursting stats this weekend where that's the first time Cercle have beaten Anderlecht back to back since 1943, which is an absolutely cracking stat. So that's one worth repeating.
Definitely, and from Cercle side, Ben already mentioned it a little, but I also want to give a little shout to Louis Torres, who on his professional starting debut scored a goal. Of course, not his main task as a left back, but he also really looked really happy in front of the cameras afterwards, as you would expect, of course, after that. So it's in his starting debut. He got 7 minutes last week, so it's not his complete debut, full debut.
Yeah, not something you expect when you're a left back, like you said, Joris, on your debut. But nice way to top it off for him. Clean sheet and a goal. I'm sure he'll be pretty happy with that one. Mentioned Westerlo. Let's go to them now in their game against Leuven. Leuven, who we were all pretty concerned about pre-season. Probably listened and were like, now we'll prove you wrong. We don't need a striker because we can still score goals and we'll just score 2 every game. That's all we're going to do. So Jon Dager Porsteinsen gets the opening one in this one. It was a really nice play down the right-hand side from Leuven. Cross comes in, as I think it falls to Altamari. He's a pretty decent shot, which is well saved by Sinan Bolat. However, Porsteinsen's there to tap in the rebound. Well, tap in, it's a difficult angle. He makes it look a little bit easy. So that puts Leuven 1-0 up. Westerlo had so many shots in this game, but didn't get any of them on target. According to the stats I saw, 13 shots, 0 on target. That's just crazy numbers. Leuven, on the other hand, had 5 shots on target, so they did actually manage to challenge Sinan Bolat in goal. They made the game pretty much safe when Perdicizzi was sent off in the 74th minute, and then Rafa Holzhauser, who else, from the penalty spot in the 77th minute, finishes the game off. 2-0 to Leuven, clean sheet, another win. It's just been a really good start from Mark Beers' side. And I guess, have you guys been impressed with kind of how Holzhauser's adapted in? I haven't seen much of him, so I'm not too sure what their style of play has been at the moment, but it's been interesting to see the lineups he's been putting out with like Casper De Noor apparently playing more centrally, and then Insingi up front. So a little bit on them, and then I guess for Westerlo, they will be disappointed that they weren't managed to get any of the shots that they had on target as well, and they had a lot of possession, so they'll be frustrated, I'm sure, but it's probably nicer this way in the sense that they got the win last week. They're off the board. You want to get that first win under your belt as a newly promoted side. And they'll probably look at this one as just, we just need to be a little bit more efficient.
I've been really impressed, guys, actually. Not so much with the way Leuven are playing, but the way that they've put the work in on pre-season, actually. That's something I want to highlight. I mean, I didn't expect them to have this kind of start, actually, which tells me that me and Joris were emphasising a lot last week that we felt there were a number of sides that weren't quite ready for the start of the season yet. Some sides start slower than others, but, because the season is starting earlier, that presents different challenges as well in relation to both fitness and performance levels and recruitment as well. And Leuven, as we know, are one of those sides who we've highlighted a number of times as having had a couple of really bad transfer windows, which I think they were aware of. So, we were kind of slightly split, weren't we, guys, when we were talking about how we felt about their recruitment, about whether it was good enough or not, and where they were still missing in some places. And I think what we're finding out now is that the recruitment not only has generally been pretty decent, but that their fitness and their tactical readiness for the start of the season has absolutely been spot on, really. I think they will be delighted with the start. And I take my hat off to Mark Bryce again. I think he's one of those coaches in the Pro League who never really seems to get the credit that I think he deserves. I think he knows absolutely what he's doing. Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to get there than you would imagine. But he sticks to his guns as well, which I think is important. And I've just been impressed by the work they've done in pre-season, and they've gone in and they've went, you know what, it's really, really important we have a good start here, because as we know, this season's going to be different to unlike any other. And I think there's this feeling that the early part of the season is maybe going to be much more important for a lot of sides this season than it has in other seasons, because who knows what state players are going to come back in from the World Cup and what the second half of the season is going to be like, injury like for all sorts of teams. So yeah, Leuven are showing lots of teams at the moment, how to do it.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold my the hands up high just yet, but well, they are definitely. I did not expect them to indeed already actually be leading the league, even if it's really early days, of course, and they're not alone in. So I am very surprised, not necessarily in the attack, but actually that they got 2 clean sheets with a defense which we would not necessarily rate highly, but with Splatings in it, and when Raogo was also been there for a while, and then a youngster in Patrice, well, there we still need a bit to discover his qualities, and he looks good. On the other hand, going already to Westerlo, they are on the other missing firepower this week. Last week it looked a bit better. This week they might actually need to recruit something in attack still. 150th game for Leuven for Maartens, so that was a nice one. He just almost finished it off with another goal, but he did in the end. Bolat had a save there. This time it took Leuven also only 2 games to get 2 wins. In comparison to last season, where it took them 12 games to get to 2 wins. They're definitely off to a good start. Another funny moment then in another game was then Perdikizi, the penalty giveaway. It was a bit of a silly watch, at least. That we're falling on the floor and then trying to grab the ball and actually grabbing the ball with your 2 hands. It doesn't look great. It is, of course, not a great action either, although harmless. Compliments to Brest, who always actually having his team ready, despite indeed last season the wins not flowing in so quickly. But physically they're always ready, and that seems to be paying off early in the season already.
I mean, I think I'm still kind of on that. Like you said, Joris, not ready to kind of go back on my prediction for them just yet. I want to see how long they can kind of keep this up with the squad they've got, because they definitely need some players. Yeah, on Louis Patrice, obviously you guys have spoken about last week getting those 2 assists, and it was him that passed the ball to Altamai for the first one. And if that shot had gone in, he'd have been going to Holzhausen, mate, and being like, "Look, mate, I'm the king of the assists in Leuven at the moment. Like from centre back, I'm the one providing. I mean, he'd have had 3, and it'd be on absolute dreamland." So, yeah, definitely been impressed with him, kind of going forward as well as kind of defensively. But I know what you mean about that back 3 is one that if you looked at on paper, you'd be a bit concerned about. So fair play to them for having 2 clean sheets. And maybe Beers is the man that can kind of help take Pennings to the next level and kind of unlock kind of the potential that people saw in him back when he was playing youth football for the Belgian national team and captaining sides and stuff like that. Let's move on to the game that kicked off at the same time as this, which was down on the coast on a beautiful sunny day, Oostend against Mechelen. Almost a similar story in the sense to the Leuven-Westerlo game in terms of the statistics for this one. I mean, Mechelen had ridiculous amounts of possession, almost 70% to Oostend 30. Didn't win the game, though. They lost this one 2-1, as I said before. Opening goal was a really, really nice pass through. I can't remember who played it through to David Atanga. I think it might have been Nick Betzner. A really, really nice through ball to David Atanga. He was given offside initially, but he didn't know that at the time, so he ran through, puts it away. Really nice finish from him, which I believe is his first goal for Oostend. It must have been, because he barely played last year, but he kind of got the game underway. VAR check, just onside. It was marginal. The lines were being drawn, and he got the goal, and he looks absolutely delighted with himself. They were then completely indebted to Hubert in goal, who made a string of really, really good saves to keep Oostend ahead. A double save, in fact, at one point to keep Mechelen out. I mean, Mechelen ended this game with 19 shots, 7 on target. Ridiculous amount of shots in that. However, they then went down, I think it was Betzner again, to Atanga for this one, and he put it away after it was kind of cut back across to him in the middle of the box. A much easier finish than his first one. His first one was a really good finish. This one's a little bit easier, but he kind of grabs the 2 goals going into half time. However, Alessandro Albanese decides to make it a little bit more interesting with a pretty horrific tackle on Nicholas Storm. Completely pointless part of the pitch to do it in. It just was a stupid tackle. He gets a straight red for that. However, Mechelen could only manage to pull one back through Thibaut Pierre in the 75th minute, and then Hubert was making a string of fine saves once again to keep it at 2-1, and Ostend get a win. Massive win for them, considering we all expect them to struggle a fair amount this season. Scott, Mechelen, on the other hand, 2 games now you've seen under the new man, Danny Boyce. What are your kind of overriding feelings without overreacting after 2 games? If that's possible.
I think that's a good point to make, Ben. I think there are some people on social media and the Mechelen fan community that are overreacting, as you would expect. Fans being very emotive. I think clearly they've had a really bad start. I think defensively there are some issues there. I think there are players who, particularly this weekend, didn't show any leadership or take any responsibility at all, actually. And there were points, particularly in the first half, where they were absolutely all over the place. At sea, you might say, literally as well as metaphorically, seeing as the Diaz Arena is only a 5-minute walk away from the beach in Ostend. I think it's difficult, this, because I think the squad is quite good, and I was particularly pleased to see Umgui back in this weekend. That was something I was moaning a little bit about to Joris on match day 1, disappointed that he didn't start, but he was back in, which I thought was a good thing. I just, they didn't start the game well. They allowed Ostend to get on top of them, to press them, and to just kind of steamroll them. Nicholas Storm looked a pretty isolated and frustrated figure. He looked reasonably up for it, but the body language told me that things just weren't clicking, and he was getting irritated and expressing that kind of quite clearly. I think really interesting to hear Danny Boyce actually say after match day 1 that they did not defend well. So I expected them to be better this week, and clearly nobody got that memo, because actually they were worse. The very things he highlighted were noticeably worse. I think they were much better in the last 25 minutes, where they had a really, really good goal and nearly managed to get something out of the game. As you were saying, Hubert had a particularly good save late on that stopped Mechelen from managing to get a point in the end. But performances like that are not performances where you're going to get anything, and I think it's a hard one. I think they're still adjusting to kind of tweaks and trying to find the right balance. There's a few players who I don't think are doing enough at the moment, so it'll be really interesting to see how they do over the next couple of weeks, because I certainly didn't expect them to start as badly as they have this season.
Yeah, it looks a bit like the reverse of what you were hoping for. You and all Mechelen fans were hoping for.
Absolutely,
has happened. Like, the defense is not shored up yet, and the attack, well, unfortunately, is also a bit less than last season. That might still change, of course, but in the first weeks of the season, they look a bit more toothless, I guess, if that makes any sense, as a saying, than last season. Anyway, I think you know what I'm getting at.
I think it's the balance, isn't it? I think to me the balance isn't right at the moment, and I expressed some concerns last week about Ngoy playing up front on his own and whether that was going to work long term, and I still kind of feel that way. But yeah, it's definitely the overall balance needs work still.
I don't have that much because I unfortunately missed this game, but to add to Ben, indeed, it were Atanga's 2 first league goals first, and he had he only scored doubles though, because last season he scored twice in a cup game as well. But that are his 4 only goals so far. But that's also still a worry for us, from us for Ostende, indeed, who is going to score the goals. If Atanga will provide them, I think they will be happy. But despite that, they might also, like many teams, as I'm seeing here a trend here, many teams might need some attacking reinforcements still. And this, I'm sure they are glad to get a win this early on in the season, at least. To not have completely missed their start.
Yeah, no, with Ostend it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because like Makta Gay is just on the bench, and we've always thought he is their best striker. He
also had the most ridiculous offside goal as well, though, on the counter. So to give, I seem to be highlighting comical effects this season as well. And that's he was offside on a counter attack where I think it was in the final minutes where Kuka was also going up front, and he put the ball in the back of the net, but from way out. But unfortunately, he was already offside. And to be offside on such ball, that's a bit of a silly move. A rookie mistake, I would say.
Yeah, he had a chance earlier before that, I think, didn't he? Again, similar situation where he was onside, just had to square it to Ndika, and he took a terrible shot.
Yeah, I think that was after, and that he wanted to score his goal there, and he was like, "No, I want my goal." But it was not there. Well, if it's the same situation, it was not a terrible shot, but not a good one, and it would have been a bigger chance of success if he would have passed it, obviously.
I think from an Ostend perspective as well, they'll be hoping that Fraser Hornby can make a real impact. Obviously, he hasn't played yet; he's just come in, but I think that will be the hope and expectation that he can add some real firepower to them, and we'll see if that's the case.
Yeah, alongside him, they signed Dylan Phillips, didn't they? The goalkeeper from Cardiff. But if Huber's going to play like that, he's going to have to wait a little bit of time before he becomes the number one, because that was a really impressive performance from a goalkeeper that hasn't been great in the past, and someone I know quite a few of us have been like, they need a goalkeeper because of some of his performances. So interesting situation there in between the sticks. We'll see when we see Phillips. And Fraser Hornby as well. It's going to be interesting to see if he can provide the goals and if that clears the way for them to let Maktar Gay leave, because I'm pretty sure he probably does want to at this moment in time. Let's go to Ghent for the evening game. Slightly overshadowed by a really awful injury to Tarek Tissoudali, which is going to keep him out of the World Cup and out of the Ghent side for a couple of months, and ruined kind of any chance of a transfer that he had. But we'll talk about that a little bit afterwards, because let's focus on the game to begin with. And it was the man they signed in the summer who opened the scoring, Hugo Kuipers, benefiting from some pretty poor play from St. Truiden on the edge of the box. They'd won it back, and then they just kind of gave it away, and just outside the area, ball kind of ricochets through to Kuipers, who makes a really, really nice finish. St. Truiden did push. Kuipers had a decent free kick effort. Then into the second half, there were a couple of other chances. Finishing off the first half, when Tissoudali went off, Lemaitre came on. He had a really decent headed opportunity. I think it was from a Kumu pass, just kind of from his own half, just launched it into the box. Lemaitre running on, heads it against the... It stayed at 1-0 for quite a while until the 80th minute, and just awful goalkeeper from Davy Ruth coming for a corner he never was going to get. He came almost like outside the area. He was coming that far out, and Daichi Hayashi got his second of the season to make it 1 apiece. And St. Truiden kind of starting the same way as last year, not last year, it's the kind of the back end of last year, where they're a difficult team to play against, and if you don't put them away, they just stick in games, and then they can do stuff like this when they'll grab kind of late equalizers and benefit from kind of your sort of mistakes. Let's kind of revisit. Let's go back to the Tissoudali injury. We've always said Ghent kind of go as Tissoudali goes, and I don't know, guys. Are you like, where do we think they're going to go from this? Because like obviously Lemaitre is the player that will kind of fit into there, but at the same time, he is nowhere near the same player as Tissoudali. He's like the complete opposite. Do you think they'll go with him, or do you think actually that Heisenberg will go, you know what, let's just stick Fofana in. Let's stick someone in a little bit more of a wing player like Tissoudali?
Honestly, I have no idea. I've been thinking about this a little bit today, and it's a tricky one because Lemaitre is not somebody who I'm convinced can play regularly up top with Kuipers. I think they're too similar in certain ways, and you know the fit's not quite right. Obviously, Depoitre is an option, and I personally be surprised if Kuipers and Depoitre was not the initial go-to option, but. This is going to potentially completely change the complexion of their season, of course, you know, such an important player, you know, going down like that. And obviously this is the second week in a row where, you know, we've had one of the, you know, the top talents in the league succumbing to, you know, one of the worst injuries that you can get, obviously, which is just, you know, it's just dreadful to see that, you know, and we wish Tarek well. Yeah, a lot for Van Heisenbroek to mull over there, I think. So we'll see what he goes with.
Yeah, indeed. I also don't have a clear image of what is going on in their mindset. Good that you mentioned Fofana, though. I've mentioned him a few times last season already, I think, but he also actually made his league debut. He also had a few minutes in the Super Cup already. It was just a very short 8 minutes debut, of course, so not much to say about it yet, but he did get his first minutes. Tisodali, yeah, I guess that you guys all said it all. Like I feel mostly gutted for the player because, well, it did look like he was, well, the rumors were there that he would actually be going out and that he would make, a move we don't necessarily would like to see, but a money move. So for him personally, that's even potentially the worst timing. And of course also, missing the World Cup because of that. Right at the moment that he really got into the playing squad in Morocco and even was one of their most important players in the recent campaign. So yeah, wish him a good recovery as well. About the game, first goal of Kuipers, you mentioned it. Roof getting a howler against him to concede that goal. That's was not the first. Was the first goalkeeper, but not the last one to have to go under a cross in this weekend. We will touch on the next on the other one as well later on. It seems to be the Anderlecht problems is moving a bit towards Gent in the Anderlecht problem. In this case, I mean, maybe an Anderlecht problem is moving to Gent. They twice got an equalizer in the last 10 minutes, so that hopefully that doesn't go play in their heads either. I do personally think they probably should get someone because of the options that there are. De Patre, yes, he definitely can play still, but can he play as much as they want? Okay, you can switch him maybe with Fofana. They'll have to see how they balance all that, I think, but they could use another direct replacement definitely as well, because I'm not sure if they can rely on the Patre for really being the creative player either. That part of Tissoudali's game, I'm not sure how they are really going to cover that. Also with an aging Vadis, who's also again injured at the moment, will come back into the fold soon, hopefully. All kinds of things we touched on in our previous episodes. Basically, I do think they really drop a few ranks in my prediction ranking just because of this injury. Then on Sint-Truiden, so yeah, they got another goal from Hayashi, another header from Hayashi to get them that point, second point in a row. They didn't win yet, but so maybe they have taken over the early contenders to take over the role of Leuven last season. But they're also difficult to beat. That's now an 11 games unbeaten run if we take the games from last and back end of last season in it as well. So indeed, definitely a difficult team to beat. Yeah, they're doing well there, and given the opponents that they had as well, the first 2 weeks, it's not a mean feat necessarily to not lose one of those games. They probably would have hoped for a win, some of them, but I think they'll happily take these 2 points if they indeed get a win soon, of course, as well.
Yeah, Joris was mentioning there that run, which if you put the back end of last season on is 11 now. I think they are at the moment. If you take that into account, I think they're only 2 games away from equaling their all-time greatest run, which I think is 13, which dates back to the mid 60s, which is incredible. And again, that just highlights what a brilliant job I think Bernd Hollerbach is doing there. Again, another one, a bit like Mark Bryce, is just not getting enough credit for, I think, the job he's doing there, and with a very, very modest injection into the squad, because they've had quite a quiet summer, really. Not as active as I think they probably should have, or I would like to see them do. There's that side is, as Joris was saying, really difficult to beat now, and they've found a great shape and way of playing that really seems to be working for them. I don't know if anybody spotted as well, Christian Bruhl's coming off after only 18 minutes. He was actually at a funeral before the game and decided that he wanted to join the squad straight away. which he did, and Hollerbach started him and later admitted that it was a bit of a mistake because his head wasn't in the right place, and that was the reason he came off so early, because it clearly wasn't working. I thought that was interesting, and I wonder, because he's such an important player for them, is he still going to be there? It looks like he was going, and now it looks like he's staying. Yeah, interesting one to keep an eye out for.
Important one for them, and well, indeed, he was, well, for a large part responsible for Hint's goal as well. Of course, he loses the ball too easily at the back, and that's where Kuipers could strike on then.
Yeah, I think it shows how important he is to them, that Hollerbach is willing to put in that risk to let him to be like, we will play you. But fair play to recognise that clearly for both player and the team, it's better that he did come off, and hopefully once he's kind of, I guess, recovered from the funeral, I guess if you can say it like that, then hopefully he'll be able to stay, because he is such an important player for them, and we really do enjoy watching Christian Pools play at his peak. Let's move on then from that game, although I have to say St. Truden's kit, I feel like I liked it less watching that one, the weird kind of checkeredness of it, but maybe it will go on me.
I was going to say that last week as well. It looks... on TV, I thought it on TV, maybe it will look better, but it actually looks worse.
Yeah, that literally was the same thing. I was like, oh yeah, that is horrid. But I don't know, sometimes like horrid kits in 30 years, they become retro and they become cool. Who knows? Let's go to Genk. And speaking of retro, I think when I first started this podcast, I said that a certain man would be top scorer in the league that year, and he proved not to be. But maybe this year is going to be the year that Cyril Dessers is top scorer in the Pro League. Now I've said this, he's probably going to sign for another club by the time we release this.
Well, at least at the time of at the time being, he actually is leading the top scorer list. So I guess
exactly,
not too bad then for you.
It works. He opened the scoring in the game against Standard. Pansel had a really nice chance to cross, kind of messed up the first cross, but got it back, fizzed it across the front, and Dessers, got in front of Duval and flicked it in, which was a nice finish from him. Cecil then made it 2 goals. Dragos then made it 2-1 on the counter-attack with a really, really nice finish after a really, really decent ball from Lascan just over the top of the Genk defence, which Dragos ran on and then curled it in. However, Duval then decided to just completely fluff up a clearance in the box, and then it fell to Cecil, who shot handball off the back of Duval. This gave Cyril Dessers another chance from the spot. He'd recently missed a penalty just before this. This time he made no mistake, made it 3-1 to Genk, and that was how this one finished. Plenty of yellow cards for Standard in this game, plenty of just Ronnie Dyler just basically, I think in basketball they call it emptying the bench, and that's exactly what he did. He just was chucking everyone on to see if anything could make a difference. The defence is just, I don't know about you guys, but the centre-back pairing of Leifis and Ducen, I've just never really felt like it's good enough. I know, Scott, you said that Dyler came out and said that he thinks 95% of this squad isn't good enough. So who's the 5%? Joris, I'm sure you watched this game. I'll let you speak about Genk, but we'll start with Standard. Could you name who is the 5% of this squad that he does think is good enough? And I mean, they had a battling performance against Genk the week before, but this felt a little bit more like what we'd seen from them last year when they were quite poor.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ronnie Dyler had been talking up Genk quite a lot before this game, and you know how impressed he'd been from what he'd seen of them last season, and obviously the intel that he'd been party to this season as well. Yeah, I mean, it did very much. The thing that stuck out to me was immediately after the first goal, actually inside the first 5 minutes, I saw literally the entire team's heads went down. The only player whose head didn't go down was Nicholas Raskan, who was trying to G everybody up. And that I thought was a terrible indication as to where this game was going, because that's not something you want to see at any point in any game, and was something we saw week in, week out last season. You know, it just tells me that mentally they are a bit fragile. There's no doubt about that, which I suppose isn't surprising, but interesting to hear Ronnie Dyler as well in his pre-match press conference talking about how he felt the atmosphere around Slessen and around the training centre was much happier, was how he described it. And I thought, okay, right, well, you know, people are enjoying coming into their work and being around each other, and things are feeling more positive. But, you know, your first first setback so early. And they did start really, really poorly. We should highlight that as well. Genk started really, really strongly and were right down their throat. But it seems, as you were talking about Leifus and Ducen there, Ben, it seems like just sometimes when you apply real pressure to Standard, they do crumble far too easily. And all those substitutions that came later from Dyler, that's a manager who's frustrated. I mean, looking at that bench, obviously De Waal gets pulled off, Leifus gets pulled off. Aaron Durham, who is one of Dyler's favourites, he's a player he knows very well and a player I expected to kind of do pretty well under Dyler for various reasons. He had a stinker as well, and there's one particular shot of the three of them sitting on the bench together and they did not look like happy boys at all, not just because they'd been substituted, but got to worry when, your senior players, your supposed big hitters in the squad aren't taking responsibility. And on Raskin again, just to come back to him, he's in a tricky situation because he could yet leave, and we know that he's waiting to see really how the early days of the new regime pan out before he makes a decision about his own longer term future. And they simply cannot afford, I don't think, to really lose a player like that, because he does have some quality, but a lot for Ronny Deila to ponder, because that'll be his own first taste of some of the issues that have been hanging over them from last season as well.
Donham was really, really very bad. I'm not sure if he actually had any high intensity run to name a very important thing if you're already not in a game as well. He was not showing up completely. Definitely a thing to do. And the other Raskin point also, I think he only has 1 year left on his contract. I feel like, he rejected 2 new proposals for a new contract at the time being. And if he is indeed waiting, it's a tricky situation indeed for them. But okay, as you would expect, I mostly want to focus on my own team, especially after a very hectic week in its own way, with the Oyer injury being confirmed. We spoke about that last week already, but it's still the league game after that. And also the unfortunate, quite soonly arranged transfer from Junya Ito to Reims. So there was the transfer happens, of course, that's another thing, but of course they did not get a replacement yet for this game, so it was a very tricky one. Also with the Dessers rumors, like it was at some point looking like a complete new attacking trio needed to start in comparison to last week's game. Well, they did really do a really good job. Of course, more than most delighted with El Canus, who got his also his first start in the league, and he performed really well. Maybe looking a bit and forgiving a lot of things in being a youngster, but he actually only missed 1 pass during the whole game, and it was not that he only gave the easy passes. Really a lot of line breaking passes and also long passes, and missing only 1 was really great. He also opened up the Standard defense for the first goal. Also could have had the assist for the second goal, although maybe that would not have been a goal if Dessers would not have blocked the initial shot from Tresor, which then, with some luck, both was not offside from Dessers and fell towards the Genk players. Well, with some luck, maybe indeed there was a lot of pressure. It really gives the vibes so far. Tanger or Franke, very early days, like the season he as a player had in 2006, 2007, where Genk always started furiously and often were 3-0 up by the 20th minutes and often could see the game out. This happened more than once. That is probably still a bit over romanticized over time, but it definitely happened a few times. I'm really liking the new look. Also, actually, that he didn't look for excuses or anything in the week that I just mentioned. That he probably had some things to say, some excuses he could have called on, but just dropped in El Canus and straight on the 10 position as well. So really good. So he had basically 3 assists for the first 2 goals, El Canus. I'm really liking the look because of indeed starting furiously, putting a lot of pressure on the ball, and you can also see it's not a wild pressure, not just the one player chasing, but the whole team knows what to do already, which is impressive. Of course, very early days. Also for the positive things, it's difficult to say if they will last, but you can already see, like I already mentioned last week as well, like what the trainer manager is trying to do. You can also still see that after a little while, they can't keep up with this pressure. In that sense, I did like the second half performance a little. They didn't really lose the control of the game, but even though losing the reins a little, in general, kept the game in quite played it out in a controlled way. So saw the game out. Even could have scored a few more, hitting the post twice. But so far, I'm really happy, especially with the performances, not necessarily only the result, but the performances that they're putting in. And I did not expect that before the season, and I know I'm not the only one for sure. Then to get back to Standard, it was a bit of a surprise to see Voljevic getting some game time, because last season he didn't feature at all, literally 0 minutes in the league after half a season loan out before that already to Eupen as well. So that should show that Dyla really still is not happy with everyone he has at the club. And I actually had forgotten that he was still there even.
So did I. I think I saw him on the squad list. He was one of those players on like Transfermarkt with like no number or something like that, and you're like, yeah, this guy's not going to hang around. Then suddenly he was on the pitch. Yeah. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah,
like...
here I'm not completely certain of, but it could even be that he was never even in the squad list last season, which makes it even more, I don't know, impressive or weird or yeah, strange, I guess.
I mean, if that's not Dyla just saying to the owners, like, look, like, we need some more players here, I don't know what is. Right, let's move on to Eupen against Club Brugge. Probably the shock of the weekend. I mean, part of this game, there is also a shocking sense of a transfer rumour that came out, I think it was on Monday, today as of recording, where it said something about one of the Bruges centre-backs being linked with a move to Germany for 12 million. And I mean, if you watch this game, there's no way that man, bless him, is worth 12 million. The first goal for Eupen comes in the first minute. Gary Magny with a header, absolutely free in the box. And if you just watch the highlights, just pause it on one of the replays when the ball comes in, and he's literally touching Insoki on the back. He's behind him and he's like tapping him on the back to say, look, mate, I'm here behind you. Don't bother dropping any deeper to clear the ball. Just let me have a free run. Insoki, being the kind man that he is, lets him have it. Just completely unmarked header. Mignolet is absolutely steaming at this point, because he's probably thinking, Eupen away, this is going to be a nice, relaxing game. I'll be absolutely fine. Probably forgot that last year it was an absolute belter to open the season. So these two seem to play some good games in the kind of first few weeks. So if the league are listening, just make Eupen play Club Brugge at some point in the first or second game, because we get a bit of a belter. However, Club Brugge did get back into the game almost instantly. Abdel Nuruddin, channeling Davy Roof, decided to absolutely fly out for a corner, completely miss it. Jack Hendry, who'd got the start over Brandon Mekele, which was interesting. We'll probably get into the team selection for Club Brugge in a little bit. He wins the header, knocks it down. Ferran Utkal is there to get a first goal of the season. Lovely poacher's goal, nice finish from him. Good to see him kind of getting off the mark. I know he got a couple of assists last week, but good for him to find the back of the net. Looking forward to seeing more of that from him going into the season. However, Club Brugge just defensively all over the place. Mignolet was making a lot of saves, and that man, Smail Prevolyak, got the second and decisive goal for Eupen. Really nice play from Durham, winning the ball in midfield and just breaking forward. No one shutting him down. Ball into Prevolyak on the edge of the box. Just a first-time swivel finish from him. It's just a fantastic finish. Proper instinctive goal. One of those classic ones where the commentator will be, this man knows exactly where the goal is without looking. And that's how it was at half-time too. Onto Eupen, the shot was on the cards. Couple of changes from Hoefkins in the second half. Noam Bamba, one of those ones that comes on. He picks up the ball in midfield, goes past Gary Magny, goal scorer, goes from hero to zero, picking up his second yellow card with a needless foul in the central areas. And at that point, you're thinking Club Brugge, against 10 men, with the quality they have, they're going to be able to finish this off. But it wasn't the case. Eupen held on. Nuruddin made a couple of saves and they won 2-1, much to the delight of Bernd Stork on the bench. He was absolutely buzzing. Offerman himself, one of the youngsters that came on, could have made it 3-1, but was offside and when he had a decent chance. It's just, an interesting kind of change in lineup from Herfkens in this one. I mean, Belanta came in, which didn't really see coming. Vormer, he'd already mentioned that Vormer was going to be replaced by Nielsen in that role, that was an instant switch. But Belanta coming in for Mbamba, I don't know if Mbamba had a little knock, but I didn't really get that. We all want Mbamba to play more. He's such an exciting talent. Henry, obviously, as I said, coming in from Mechler, that was quite an interesting one. Sobol came in as well. He came in for Maya. Again, didn't see that one coming. On the other hand, for Eupen, we were worried about them before the season, but kind of the players that they've brought in seem to be doing quite well. I know it's obviously early days. Van Genechten had a decent game. Christy Davis, Charles Cook, these guys playing really well. Mani, obviously, with the opening goal, one of the players they've had before. Durham, signing last year, didn't get much game time, but had an impact on this one. How shocked were you guys at the Bruges performance and kind of the team selection from Herfkens in this one?
Well, the team selection was the biggest surprise to me, and obviously it didn't work. Not just because they lost the game, but I don't think it worked. I didn't really understand the changes that Karl Hofkins made. I don't know whether it was a simple case of he felt like some rotation, he felt like he could, or whether there was something more tactical kind of behind it. Only he can really explain that, but it certainly didn't work for them. You mentioned Prevoljac's goal. I thought that was a lovely goal, just a really, really nice goal, real quality, which we know he's got, and Eupen are going to need that throughout the course of this season. But yeah, I just simply didn't understand the changes because I felt it interrupted, any flow that they'd built up on match day one.
Well, they didn't really have a flow built up on match day one. They escaped there. That's why there were changes. That's why there were changes. I think that's quite obvious, that part. But, well, that it didn't work is also quite obvious because this was very, very much worse. And, very worrying signs, early signs, of course, for Hoefkes in his squad, maybe. It's, of course, not terrible point-wise yet. They're just in the middle of the pack. Not, but you would expect them to win against Eupen, especially it being, as they mentioned in the beginning, the first victory ever for Eupen. So shocked by the result. Yes, definitely playing against 10 men for a while, having 8 minutes at a time on, which came out more or less out of nowhere, which reminds us of last season in the reverse fixture, Club Brugge Eupen, the first game day last season. Where they got even more time added on, but this time it was more of torture for the Club Brugge fans. Also fair play to them, to the fans. I heard that they also were condemning that and didn't really want to watch longer because their performance, it was just not great. Eupen looked lively, so that was good to see. Indeed, we don't expect many things from them this season, but this was definitely a performance they can try to build on for the next weeks and in the whole season. The new signings seem to adapt well. We'll have to see. I think they still are in the danger zone. It's only one result now, of course, but it will definitely give them a confidence boost. What else? Yeah, Nuruddin conceding, Eupen winning despite Nuruddin and Club Brugge losing despite Mignolet is also something I think you could say. If you would change the goalkeepers, the scoreline would have been way harsher. Mignolet he was the one Club Brugge player who again had a good game. He really picked up his form somewhere around the playoffs last season, and he's the goalkeeper they desperately need. But this time it wasn't enough. Nuruddin once underneath the cross there with a goal where it was punished. Also in the second half, there was a cross that was going nowhere and would have gone wide anyway, that he tried to pick up and just, I don't know, he missed it, but not really missed it. He just should have let it go, but he touched it and it was an unnecessary corner. He's not having the best of starts of the seasons with no harm this time. So in the end, so that he got away with that. And last thing is again back to Club Brugge. In comparison to Anderlecht's bad performance, here it were the Club Brugge players, Van Aken and Mignolet, who are criticizing the system or saying that we need to find some clarity in the field. So they are in not not in straight terms, but are basically criticizing Hoefkens already and the system they're playing with. We'll have to see. Anyway, there seems to be there will definitely be some talks going on there as well, as we speak about such things. And I think, everyone is really worried about the level that Club Brugge is getting at the beginning of the season. Of course, the Skatelaar sale just got almost finalized now in the Unsoki deal. If that comes through, they will have a lot of money to spend, and so their reinforcements still have to come. We don't know what Lang is going to do, so I think maybe also that plays a role, as long as the transfer window is open, that they are not complete yet, and we'll have to see if they will be ready in time for I guess for the Champions League at least, and building on that, of course, also in the league.
Yeah, and I think you kind of put a little bit on it there, Joris. If that Insoki goes and Charles Ketelaar goes, they've obviously got that money. I don't want to bash Insoki too much, but I've never really felt he's that good. I think he's decent. He had some decent performances at the back end of last season, but for 12 million, they could easily buy 2 central defenders that will be as good, in my opinion. I think they can easily use that money there. They can get replacement for him if they want to, or they could play Mbamba central centre back. They could play Otasawi, who played in the Super Cup, and he looked pretty all right in that position. I think they could do with getting Buchanan back on the left hand side. I liked kind of the balance they had with him and Skov Olsen. So that could be important. But yeah, I think some kind of clarity, like with Charles de Ketelaar finally going, if Insoki goes, it's more clarity for them being like, right, this is kind of who we've got. And we all know what's going to happen. They may struggle first bit of the season, but come January, extended World Cup break and all that sort of stuff, they'll go on a run and they'll probably be absolutely fine. But it is more of a concern for the Champions League. Let's move on to the complete opposite end of Champions League football. As far away probably from Champions League football as you could possibly get at the moment was the match in Sarang at the Stade du Palais between Sarang and Kortrijk. And fair play if you watch this one. I mean, I don't think it was a boring game. I just think the standard of football was so bad it made it kind of entertaining. I think I don't want to say it too early, but I think this was Sarang's best chance of getting 3 points. Probably the best chance they're going to get for the entire season. Like Kortrijk were pretty terrible from the start of this game. They gave away a penalty within, I can't remember how far into the game it was. It was, 20 minutes in? Simon Ellisor absolutely did Desilets, this new signing on loan from Antwerp for Kortrijk, a couple of step overs around him. How the referee doesn't give it straight away, I don't know. It was such an obvious penalty. And you think, right, this is a great chance for Simon Ellisor. He looked a little bit lively to start the game. You're like, we spoke about him in the preseason preview about who's going to score the goals. Are they going to get the goals out of this man? He gets the penalty and he misses it. Illich makes the save. And at that point, you're like, okay, surely Kortrijk, with their just lumping it aimlessly, at some point going to get a chance here, because they were literally just lumping the ball to Habib Gay up front. They were looking for Mbayo on the left-hand side, but the ball's just going out of play. De Bruyne did literally nothing in midfield. He got substituted at half-time. I completely forgot he was even playing. They were just pretty woeful. And then Ben Chaib, on the 26th minute, gets himself sent off. Just a stupid tackle on Daniel Apare. It was really pointless. And Apare, off the back of that, picked up an injury and had to go off as well. So that's a real shame for him and Sarang. But it was a really stupid tackle from him. It was in the middle of nowhere on the pitch, basically. He gets a straight red. And again, you're like, right, Sarang, this is your chance. Like, 10-man Kortrijk playing terrible football. This is the time. They ended up with 55% possession, 19 shots on goal. Only 5 of them were on target. And that pretty much sums it up. They could just not put the ball in the back of the net. Completely lacked any potency up front. I thought their best player in the game was Tishbuabua, the centre-back, was their best player. He actually got himself sent off in this game as well, just to sum it all up. But I was really impressed with him at the back. I thought he dealt with Gay really, really well, and the other strikers. However, Kortrijk did actually win this game. Set piece, falls to Watanabe, he stabs it in the 58th minute, and that's pretty much how it ends. Ellisor had a really good chance to get his goal again, but he misses it. Players were just absolutely launching shots from 40 yards out for Sarang, which was just completely bizarre. I think What Load of Waffle put up a picture where one of the shots comes in and it's like the angles from behind the goal, but the ball is where kind of the time is on the screen. That's how far off it is from going in. It probably went out of the stadium. It was that bad. And I don't know, guys. I feel like I don't want to speak too early, but I feel like I just can't see Serang actually winning a game. Like, if they can't win this one with all the chances against such a poor Kortrijk side, when are they going to win a game? Because there's just nothing in that team that says that there's no goal scorers in that team. You just look at the team and you think if they had Mikatadze and Aziz from last year, they probably would win that game. And to kind of like make it even worse, those two lined up for Metz and a 3-0 win in the second division of France and were involved in goals for that side. So they're definitely not coming back. We kind of can't. They've said it wasn't going to happen, but they also kind of, it didn't look like they were going to come last year, especially Mikatadze, but then he did turn up near the end of the transfer window, but they're definitely not coming this year. And I think I wanted to hope that although we all presume they were going to finish bottom, that they'd at least be able to put up a fight. And I think this performance, second game in, kind of summed up why everyone is pretty confident that they're definitely going to go straight down at bottom place.
Well, fair play to anybody who watched all of this game, because it was an absolute eyesore. My eyes were bleeding by the end of it, despite the drama. You know, there being 2 red cards and a missed penalty. But yeah, I mean, the entire game was just, lacked quality, both sides lacking composure. All of those worries about Serang kind of coming to fruition at the moment. And, you're right, Ben. I mean, these are the games that Serang are going to have to win if they're going to even stand a chance. There's absolutely no doubt about that at all. And they kind of confirmed that actually, arguably, our worries, are not misfounded at all on the basis of that. They just, lacking composure and inability to make the right decision at kind of key moments. Kortrijk also have had a really bad start, despite having a decent squad, and something to me is just not right there. I don't know what it is at the moment, but they were just as poor, I felt. I mean, they obviously edged this game, really getting a little bit of luck more than anything else, but something doesn't seem right. The body language doesn't look good at all, and at the moment something needs to happen with them as well. I think there are players in that squad who probably should be getting a look in who aren't at the moment, so I'm not sure what Karim Belhazin's thinking with some of his team selections. He's tinkering a little bit, I think, but they're they've got plenty of worries at the moment of their own.
Definitely a big worry for Kortrijk. Despite grabbing their first win in after 7 defeats in a row combined with last season, so I guess there is a part of the explanation maybe why they are not having the best of times as well, not the best of confidence as well. Yeah, Serang got an XG of 2.84, so actually for a game that you have to scratch your eyes out, that's not so bad. But yeah, of course, it came from a lot of shots which were not so effective, which is not so useful. And of course, a penalty helps as well. And 2 shots on the post. If you don't win the game with all these circumstances in your favor, you already mentioned them. Penalty man having a man more for an hour. It's difficult to see them winning a game, although despite these factors in the hand, indeed, like I mentioned, they hit the post twice as well. So that part of luck that they seem to need a bit more even did not go their way. Chihuahua had a really good strike from 40 yards out or so, which was funny, but and was like, well, this is going out definitely, but actually it was a good strike and would have gone in goal if it wasn't for Illich. But of course, it says a lot if that's already one of the few shots on target as well. Finally, a win for Kortrijk, but that's also the only thing they can take away of this, I think, because their performance was was arguably worse than Serres. They did manage to get a point with a scrappy goal from a set piece. Actually, I'm more worried for them than I was before the season. And I think out of the 3 of us, I was already the most worried for them.
Yeah.
And so far, this is not improving that image.
Yeah, I think Belhasin looked like a man under pressure on the sidelines, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He looked very irritable actually, and I don't know what that's an indication of, but whatever it is, it certainly isn't good. That's for sure. And I know some of the Kortrijk fans are starting to turn. There are rumblings. The club have come out and said, it's too early to kind of panic, and we're going to stick with Plan A at the moment. But there are things turning there that are not good, regardless of which way you look at it. I just want to give a quick shout out to the Serang fan who was singing incessantly into a megaphone throughout the entire game. Fair play to that guy, whoever he is, because the football he's having to watch at the moment, home or away, is going to be really, really difficult for him all season. So if you can bring that enthusiasm to the Stade de Paris every second week, then at least somebody down in Liège and Serang colours is going to have a good time.
Definitely. I mean, he got to see two debutants, Silla and Abanda, literally straight into the team after signing during the week. I mean, that just kind of sums up their situation. It's good to see Fayez Selemani get back on the pitch as well for Kortrijk. I mean, so many rumours flying around. I did not expect to see him playing for Kortrijk again, but clearly a move hasn't materialised yet. I wonder if it's kind of he realised he needs to get back in the shop window, so to speak. But we'll see how that develops. But at least if he's playing, there's a little bit more excitement for Kortrijk fans. But I think, yeah, Belgian is definitely on borrowed time, judging by that performance. Let's go to the final game of the weekend. Another one that only finished 1-0, but I don't know about you guys, I quite enjoyed this one. It was Antwerp hosting Zulte Waregem, finished 1-0 to Antwerp. However, both sides had so many chances. I mean, Zulte Waregem were playing like a really open, attacking kind of style, which obviously puts them under so much pressure. And defensively, you're just like, you just were kind of waiting for Antwerp to score. Balikwisha had a ton of chances in this game. Miyoshi had a couple of early shots as well. Like Bossert was very busy and played a pretty decent game, I thought. They were trying to play out from the back. It's clearly something Mbaile wants them to do. Put them under a ton of pressure, though, in this game. They looked a lot better when they just tried to hit Antwerp on the counter-attack, especially with Dompe. Like Dompe was getting them up the field quite a bit, getting them into good positions. Unfortunately for them, they did go behind when Balikwisha scored in the 68th minute. This was after he completely missed one of the easiest chances I've ever seen. Mikkel Frey put it on an absolute plate for him at the back post, and he just completely fluffed it. I think it was then eventually given offside to save his blushes, but that, I think I messaged you guys both. I was like, that is, if it wasn't offside, going down as an early contender for miss of the season, because it was absolutely woeful. Salz's kind of chance of getting back into the game was pretty much scuppered in the 75th minute when Novatus Dismas, the Tanzanian central midfielder, got his second yellow card of the game and was sent off. They kept pushing. I didn't think they played badly. I think defensively they were a little bit all over the place, which is kind of what you expect from them. I did quite like the look of Tambadou. I liked his kind of aggressive defensive attitude, kind of flying into tackles and doing all of that. But then alongside him, you need a little bit more of a subtlety to kind of counteract that craziness that he was bringing to the game. But Antwerp looked pretty relieved with that win. Not a convincing performance again, but if they'd taken more of their chances, this could easily have been a 3-0 win for the Great Old.
Yeah, I think it's a case of a steady positive start for Antwerp. Actually, we know that Mark van Bommel's actually started quite well at most of the clubs he's been at. What's happened later, obviously, is a different story, but he does tend to start quite well, and their start's been as good as they can hope for. Obviously, there's the ongoing sort of rotational issue around Frey and Janssen, and it'll be interesting to see kind of whether somebody else comes in or what they do with that longer term. But I'm not sure the constant rotation of these two is necessarily the answer. I think they're going to need to be able to vary that a little bit as well. But yeah, I mean they'll be delighted with the start that they've had, and obviously they've still got Europe to play for, which we'll talk about shortly. Zulte, on the other hand, I think we're starting to see some quite positive early signs of Mbaile starting to exert his influence. That side is kind of gradually being changed and remoulded into the new coach's template, I think. And the initial indications are reasonably positive. It's too early to say too much about it at the moment, but they're looking generally more solid to me. And, they just something feels a bit more positive about them. Nice to see Sangare playing. He's somebody we spoke about on our pre-season preview. Mamadou Sangare, who's obviously on loan from Red Bull Salzburg, and it'll be interesting to see how he does over the course of the season, because I think he's quite an exciting one to kind of keep an eye out for. But yeah, I mean, we've been very negative about Zulte for a long time, I think, all three of us, and it's just really quite interesting to see, a new coach come in who's obviously a club icon there, slowly starting to put his stamp on it and just change the squad. And yeah, it's going to be one of the stories of the season in a way, just to see how they develop over the course of the season, I think. Because the initial signs are reasonably positive so far. I mean, obviously they've one win and one defeat doesn't tell us too much at the moment, but from what we've seen of both the games so far, I think there are plenty of reasons for Zulte to feel optimistic, and certainly a lot more optimistic than they had a right to be going into the start of the season.
Yeah, I also saw the fans of Zulte on social media, despite the loss, being happy to see what their team was trying to do, and there was something that they really could enjoy a bit more of their own playing style after the past 2 seasons, where they were not an easy watch at all times. Yeah, so also for me, I think you mentioned it as well, Stwargem was better than we all anticipated before the season, I think, which is good. Few of the new signings seem to be slotting into the squad really easily and finding their way. Also, they got the 7th and final red card of this weekend to finish it off. That's it's not a good thing, but it has to do with Zulte. And about Antwerp, well, they already played 4 games now, of course, with the European games as well. Defensively, they didn't concede yet, so that's a good sign. Although, indeed, in this game, it could have easily happened as well. Like maybe if Ben says that it could have easily been a 3-0, it could have, but it also could have been I don't know. Yeah, Antwerp deserved to win, but a 3-2 or so, or 3-1. But on the other hand, so 4 games in and also 4 goals scored. That is a bit on the low side. It is an Arsenal way maybe to win a championship, but yeah, but they definitely miss something somewhere. So like it's good for them that they're winning these games, or in the case of the Conference League, that they at least go through. Also, I realized I miscalculated. I miscounted the Balikwisha late winner against Rita, so it's 5 goals in 4 games. Still not impressive against the opponents that they had. Let me phrase it like that then. But of course, if you shore it up at the back like that, that's it can be enough, and that's so. And I'm sure they will be gladly taking these wins and hoping they will, improve their game, which was already better than last week. It was an easier watch than last week, I think. So maybe early signs of a good start for Antwerp, together with Leuven, the only team that has the maximum of the points after 2 games still, and at the same time, well, also the 2 teams that have clean sheets so far.
I mean, as long as you stay in games with that kind of keeping clean sheets and stuff, that always makes it better. And they face each other next week, so someone's 100% record's going to go. Who'd have thought 3rd week in Antwerp-Leuven would be a battle of the top sides? Not me, that's for sure. Back to Zulte just quickly, they've also picked up attacking midfielder Dani Ramirez, comes in from Lech Poznan, which looks like a decent signing. Obviously, he's won the league with Lech Poznan, who've kind of usurped Legia Warsaw in terms of the best team in Poland. It's kind of them and Rakov and a couple of others. So definitely a nice player to bring in, kind of a little bit more of an attacking midfielder. So it's kind of see what he does. But yeah, I'm agreed about Sangare. He's been really interesting to watch. I guess my only worry about kind of Antwerp not scoring goals is that there's so much attacking talent in that team. We want to see it kind of brought to the fore and being used a lot more. But maybe with Victor Fischer kind of back to fitness and hopefully free of injuries for a little bit. Obviously, it looks like Benson's off to Burnley, so they kind of lose that, but bringing in Fischer back. Miyoshi started the season pretty well. I thought he was quite lively against Ottawa again. Just needs to have a little bit better kind of finishing, but he looks pretty decent. So good start for them. They'll obviously want to build on that under Mark van Bommel. Scott, you mentioned we'd talk about European stuff, so let's get to that now. Unfortunately, at the time this will go out, Rangers and Union will have already played each other. So already kind of, by the time you listen to this, you'll know kind of what has happened at the Denderleaf in the first game. However, looking at kind of beyond that, if they do manage to get through, which we're really hoping they do, it's going to be a really tough game against Rangers. We know how good Rangers have been in European football, especially over the last couple of seasons. It's going to be very difficult for Union, but fingers crossed they can pull it off. They then face up against Monaco or PSV. Monaco's manager we also obviously know very well from his time at Club Brugge, Philippe Clermont, or PSV obviously over in Holland and the Netherlands, sorry. So we obviously want a Belgian side to get one up over them. Pretty tough kind of second draw for Union. If they do get past Rangers, it seems like it just gets just as tough. Let's look at elsewhere as well. Antwerp, they got through obviously against Zeta. They faced Lillestrøm of Norway, which is by no means an easy game. Lillestrøm have had a really good season in the Eliteserien, and we had a good season last year, obviously, to get back into European football. Pretty sure they'd just been promoted as well, so they did a Union and got straight into European football on the back of a promotion. So by no means is that a foregone conclusion, and definitely a sticky tie for Antwerp. If they do manage to get through that, they either play another kind of Nordic team in Breidablik of Iceland or Istanbul Başakşehir. Obviously, Istanbul being the more difficult of those two sides. But, I mean, if Breidablik can get through against Istanbul, you'd have to say they're probably a tricky side as well. Anderlecht face up against Paide of Estonia. You'd imagine they're going to be fine in that one and get through, but you never know. I think Paide are the side, with many may remember, former Liverpool defender Ragnar Klavan went back to Estonia to play for his home side, Paide. So they've got a little bit of experience in there, but you'd expect Anderlecht, despite their performances at the moment, to get through. If they do, they'll either play Kups of Finland or Young Boys of Bern in Switzerland. That's a tricky tie. Young Boys, by no means a bad side. Almost one of the premier sides in Swiss football at the moment, with the kind of decline of Basel. So, yeah, I feel like that's a really tricky one, guys. We'll get to that. And then Ghent, they will face Ammonia Nicosia for the Europa League qualification. Again, I'd expect them to get through on that. They did pretty well against Cypriot opposition last season, but it's Ghent and qualification rounds, and we know what that means. They always make it more difficult for them than it needs to be. Joris, I'm going to go to you first on this one, because I always seem to go to Scott first on things, so we'll let you have the first shout. Which of those ties do you feel are more intriguing in the sense of like the matchups, and who are you kind of more worried for looking ahead?
For both Antwerp and Anderlecht, Union, they will have a tough time against Rangers, and then again against. It would be really cool if they would pass that, because either one of these other matchups has some history in it. So that would be just a cool matchup. But I don't expect them to go through after 2 or 4 games to the Champions League. But at least they will fall back into the Europa League group stages. So I'm not really worried about that. Ghent against Nicosia, Ammonia Nicosia. Yeah, we should know them as well still from last year, where they almost knocked Antwerp out in the qualifiers. So they are warned there, definitely, Ghent. But normally you would expect that they would not have an issue with going through there. So I think in the Europa League, there should be some Belgian teams in the Conference League. For Antwerp, I'm more worried about Lillestrøm than... Well, it is a tough one, though. I'm worried about Lillestrøm already, and then if it's Istanbul as well, there's also a lot of players with Belgian, especially Anderlecht, links there. So also definitely not an easy one to get past. But okay, kind of don't really want to think about that yet. That's because this is all hypothetical speculation. In just I think they will pass again. Hope they will pass against Lillestrøm, and then you can ask me the question again. Same with Anderlecht. I think they should be fine with Paide normally, but then against most likely the Young Boys, that's going to be a tough one. But yeah. Again, ask me again in a few weeks, but they did start their season in Switzerland quite well as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Union, who, as Ben was saying, we will know the result of this by the time, you guys are listening to this, but I hope Union go out there and play the sort of football we know they can play, be positive and fearless as they've been for at least the last couple of years now, and have a right good go, because, they have no reason to fear anything. They've earned the right to play on this stage, so go out and enjoy it, and hopefully have have something to take to Ibrox. Antwerp worry me slightly. I think that's a tricky tie against Lillestrøm, and they're going to have to play quite well to get through that, I think. So I do have a slight concern about them. That one very much could go either way. Equally, I do have a concern about Anderlecht, but that's only on the basis of the fact they're not playing particularly well at the moment. So although I would certainly expect them to get past Pied, I worry just a little bit about whether they're going to make the group stages without some improvement, because, just these ties are absolutely not easy, and Pied did rest a good chunk of their senior squad recently, so they're definitely taking this tie really, really seriously. Ghent, on the other hand, that's another one that's trickier than it seems. What we do know for definite is that Ammonia will not have Didier Lamkelzee in his side. He's decided to pull the plug on a move there at the last minute, hoping now to go to Ferencváros in Hungary. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But, they managed to pull through kind of last year and get into the group stages. So hopefully they can do the same as well. So good luck to all the Belgian sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed we'll have a little bit more European football to watch. That probably wraps it up for this episode. As always, guys, thank you very much for joining me.
It's been an absolute delight. See you soon.
Pleasure.
Fantastic. And yeah, thank you very much for listening, everyone. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. And remember, you can always get in touch with us via our Twitter account. We are open to any questions, queries, feedback, or anything like that. And yeah, we'll see you very soon next week on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.